Welcome to the Resiliency of the Human Spirit podcast, where we share all about human triumphs for the collective's healing and empowerment. I am your host, Priscilla Hanley. My guest today is LaToya Zavala. LaToya has been transforming lives for 20 years, now serving the global community. She is a spiritual inner power coach, master Reiki practitioner, master emotional freedom technique practitioner, and motivational speaker. She helps conscientious women leaders release their real blocks so that they can create their freedom and power. LaToya is a United States Navy veteran who has proudly and honorably served her country for 10 years. Without further ado, I'm going to bring LaToya on right now. Hi, LaToya.
Hi, Priscilla.
How's it going?
Oh, it's going really well. I'm feeling honored and blessed to be here. So thank you for sharing such an important space with me.
Thank you for taking the time to join me and our audience today. And I really just want to start by saying thank you so much for your service to our country. And we had a call a few weeks ago where we talked about many different topics. And we also talked about your life journey. So I would really love for you to start by sharing your story and your life journey on how you navigated and healed your journey through domestic violence and the suppression of your voice to become the
Yeah.
empowered woman you are today.
Thank you. Thank you. And again, I just feel like it's an honor to share the story and to be here. I know that so many women have experienced some form of it and are experiencing some form of it now. And so just having the conversation can be liberating for someone. Yeah, I experienced some form of sexual abuse, exploitation throughout most of my early life. When I was in kindergarten, um, kindergarten, there was this game that would be played, and the end goal of the game was that I was pinned down and touched in my genital areas and kissed all over my face. And I remember feeling so annoyed and upset because we would all get in trouble because the teachers thought, we're all playing the game. And I wasn't. I was in fact being assaulted. But it wasn't caught, it wasn't understood in that way. And so that continued from grade to grade to grade because I was in um, a a private school. And so it's you don't process it that way when you're younger, but I know now that subconsciously there were a lot of messages, there were a lot of meanings that I made from what was happening to me, some of them being that, oh, I must not be worthy enough to be understood or to be heard, or to be respected, to be accepted without having to be touched, to be believed. And so some of these messages, these beliefs started, taking root in me. And so in some form, I was experiencing that throughout my early life. When I was 14, I was working in a sub shop, and the cousin of one of the male workers asked me to come to his apartment to pick up something, and I did, and then I was sexually assaulted there. So I feel like because the assault was happening to me so early and continually happening to me, this idea of this is who I am, this is where my worth is, this is how I am valuable to anyone in the world. I feel like I was carrying that belief and I was behaving, according to that belief. And maybe even, what's the word? Just carrying and emanating that energy, right?
Mhm.
And so when I was 16, turning 17, I entered a relationship that I knew was toxic. I knew was unhealthy. I knew that he was carrying very controlling behavior. I knew that he was not mentally stable. I knew that what he felt for me was not love as we know it truly to be. And yet I still entered that relationship, and I still subjected myself to it. And, I know a lot of women, we enter these relationships and we subject ourselves to it, thinking that we'll get better, they'll get better, we'll get better. And sometimes we're thinking, oh, if we just show enough love, if we just do enough, if we just, cook better or clean better or have more sex or what, if we just are enough in some way, that it will get better, it will be okay, we'll be chosen, we'll be accepted finally. And that's just not how domestic violence works. And anyway, I ended up being in this relationship for years. I eventually moved in with him. I was treated horribly. I was told that I was lucky that I was there because I was ugly. I didn't have the capacity to be loved. If I left him, I would only get someone like him or worse. I was lucky to be with him because nothing that I did was enough. And so I really didn't merit being with anyone else. And I believed them. And I believed these messages because of what I had been throughout my life. So I stayed. And eventually, I was cheated on, I was lied to, I was used. And the way that I describe it is I was eventually very physically, mentally, verbally, emotionally, financially, and sexually abused. I believe I experienced all the facets of abuse that we have identified in our world. Yeah, everything that he owned, I would say at least 98% of what he owned, I bought or I supported. My name was on the phone bill, the apartment, the clothes on his back, the car that he was driving, the insurance, like all of it was me. And I did this because I really felt like this is the only way that I could somehow, in some way, at one point, be enough. And I lived that for years. One day, it was a Sunday, he had taken the car, we lived in Massachusetts, he had taken the car and went down to the Cape, and without telling me, and I woke up and his best friend had called me and told me where he was and what he was doing. And it was a normal day, it was a normal occurrence, and I heard, it wasn't an audible voice, but I heard like an echoing presence voice that just came in and just like permeated my being. I understood the power of this voice. And for me, that was spirit. And I heard spirit say so resounding within me, it's time. And only those two words and nothing else. And I didn't need anything else. My whole being knew and understood what that meant. It was time for me to go. And I had left, I think maybe 4 times before. And I know the statistics is that it takes a woman in abuse 4 to 7 times before they actually leave, 4 to 7 attempts. And I think this was maybe my 4th. And I packed all my clothes in a garbage bag. I called my brother and asked if he would pick me up. I didn't know if he would because I was kind of estranged from my family. And he said, yeah, I'll come to get you. And he came and picked me up. I left with a garbage bag full of clothes and I left everything else behind. When I say everything, I mean everything, including, as I felt, my reputation and the last tiny bit of self-respect and self-worth that I had, I left behind. And I mean that in a way that when I left, I entered a very deep depression. It was extremely hard. But I left and it was the final time. And also the statistics say that when you leave, oftentimes the violence can get worse. It's the most vulnerable time. And that proved true for me. I left and he started, like calling. And at that time we were carrying beepers. So you probably remember dating ourselves, right? We were carrying beepers and he was like blowing up my pager. And he would stop by my job and all kinds of things. And one day he said, let me just take you to the train station. And I said, okay. And I got in the car and he took me to the train station. And when he parked, he started talking and then, he's apologizing for certain things. And then he said to me, LaToya, I really do love you. And he had given me a bouquet of flowers and I put it down in the car and I said to him, I said, I don't think you know what love is. And by the time that I said the word is that was coming out of my mouth, his hand was around my throat. And a trigger alert for those who may be listening. But long story short, I surrendered to the fact that I probably was going to die at that moment. And I blacked out. And I surrendered because I felt like I had made peace with God. I had made peace with my family. I had made peace with what my life was, and really didn't have any aspirations for the rest. And so I closed my eyes and prepared to leave. And I think Source was not done with me. And so he let go. He was like breathing heavy, just to tell you the force that he was exhibiting. And I grabbed my purse without another word, and I got out of the car and I walked away. I believe that was the last time that I saw him. And that was the end of that relationship. And so you can probably imagine the journey of healing from all of that. I believe that each facet of abuse literally has its own path of healing. I needed to go through the path of fixing my credit and fixing my financial name. And that had its own path of healing, like the purging, the crying, the releasing of the attachments of how I identified myself financially and with money, the releasing of the shame that I felt for allowing someone to do that to me financially. And through that, then there's another part of that, healing your ability to spend money. I remember people often ask me, why did you get that tattoo? I got a big tattoo on my thigh. And there's only certain people that I can explain it to. My son used to ask me all the time, and I used to tell him, you're not old enough yet. You're not old enough yet. But I think last year I finally did tell him it was my symbol of freedom. It was one of the first things that I purchased with my money without having to ask permission, without feeling controlled, without feeling like I needed to hide, without feeling the oppression. And it was a symbol of freedom for me. And that's where the tattoo came from. And so, significant healing pit stops, if you will, along the journey of just the financial piece. Now then about the body, right? And physical touch. When I started dating my husband, it was really hard for me because he's very affectionate. His love language is physical touch. And it was very difficult for me because he was always hugging me. He wanted to walk holding hands. And I was like, I just don't want to be touched. And he couldn't understand it and he took it personally. And so there was a couples now a journey of healing for something he had no part in.
Right.
And then there was a journey of healing for myself in the shame and the guilt that I felt that he now had to be a part of that, and also, the credit report. Now he's married to me, he's attached to my name, all of these things, the shame, the guilt, there was another level when I met him and we coupled and then we got married. And then there was, when my son was born, he's like my husband, very affectionate, and he would always hug me. And children typically, they'll hug you around your neck. Well, as you know, my neck was a super sensitive area for me.
Right.
I was like, you can't hug me there. And I would always tell my husband and my son, you cannot hug me there. Don't touch me on my neck. But that was me also surrendering to the story that my neck is a trigger. And in the healing process, you realize that there are stories that if we continue to repeat, we continue to believe. And if we continue to believe, they continue to be our reality.
Mm-hmm.
And in my healing journey, I want to say after Reiki, after I found Reiki, I decided, because it starts with a decision, I decided my neck is not going to be a trigger for me anymore. And I started to do the affirmations, and I started to do the self Reiki on my neck. And I would go to my practitioner, and I would include that in the process. And little by little, I would allow them to touch my neck. And the way that I describe it now is, now I don't even remember sometimes that was a trigger unless I'm telling the story like this, right?
Mm-hmm.
I am so free from that trigger. I have 3 kids now. They all hug me around my neck. They all touch me there. They all, and my husband rubs me and gives me neck massages. His hands are really big because he comes from the farm. He used to milk cows. And I'm okay. I don't even remember that was such a powerful trigger for me, because now I have had such powerful healing. And my message to people now is, I know that when I was going through the traditional healing process, that the conventional psychology, the conventional science says that, once you have a powerful trigger like that, it never goes away. You just learn to manage it. You learn to control it. You learn to mitigate it. And I'm just going to say, I call bullshit. I don't believe that. I believe that your mind is way, way, way more powerful than we as a world system give it credit for. And we are still developing and understanding the power of our minds. And you can do absolutely anything, especially if it's emotionally connected. You can do anything you put your mind to. And if you really lean into the energetic healing tools, it can happen for you. And I will put the disclaimer that the world has asked me to disclaim. I'm not a clinical psychologist by choice for things, because of things like this. And I fully respect what the place that it has in our world and what it does, but that is not my belief. I believe no matter what your trigger is and how powerful it was, it can be released. And I feel that I am an example of that miracle.
Absolutely. The power of intention is
The power of
phenomenal.
intention, the
Right.
power of intention and the power of belief. You choose what you believe. Eventually, when you come to the conscious state, oh, this was a belief. Oh, I can choose to continue in that belief, or I can choose to change it. Is powerful. It
Oh,
is
yes.
powerful. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Wow. This is
And
such
now here
a
I am. As I was saying, I have 3 kids. My middle one is adopted. The other 2 are birth kids. I've been married this year. We've been married for 22 years. The end of the year will be 23. I've had a successful military career. I am now doing the healing work that my heart has always been calling for and desired to do. And I can't say that I have ascended. There are still things that I feel every level, unlocks a new level of awareness and understanding and some healing that gets to be done. All things with purpose. And I believe that every level brings a new level of healing that gets to be done so that you can step even deeper and further into whatever purpose, mission, calling, message that we're here to share with the world. And so here I am, Priscilla.
Wow. I want to say that's such a powerful, profound journey. And you are validation that the power of intention and choice and belief, can change anything and everything, right?
I believe that. Thank you for agreeing with me. But I believe that. Yeah,
Oh, I
absolutely.
believe that too. I mean, I'm an energy healer. I mean, you are too. So, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
that's one of our things that we believe in. Anyway, I did some research for this call, and
Mhm.
I'll just read this very short paragraph here. So I got this paragraph from National Coalition Against Domestic Violence. So it
Mhm.
says here, on average, nearly 20 people per minute are physically abused by an intimate partner in the US. During 1 year, this equates to 10 million men and women. On a typical day, domestic violence hotlines in the US receive over 19,000 calls. And intimate partner violence is estimated to cost the US economy between 5.8 billion and 12.6 billion annually. I mean, these are astounding statistics. That,
I think they're astounding and they're not. They're astounding because it's horrific. We feel that this is not the way we would like to live with each other. We feel that we don't have to because there's so many resources to help us um, out of our toxic behaviors. And this is what feels astounding. And at the same time, it's not astounding because as a society, we continue to tolerate it.
mm, true, yeah.
You know, I'll just share here really quick. One of the really powerful reasons for me why I was getting out of the military is because the person who was elected as president, before he was elected, he was recorded saying, if you have power and if you have money, you can grab them by the PUSSY anytime you want. That was recorded. It was recorded. It's not hearsay. It wasn't a doctor tape. He didn't deny it. It was recorded. And it wasn't a joke. It is his firm belief. And I say, as a society, the United States elected him as the leader of the country, as commander in chief, someone who would say these words. You as a military and me as a military personnel, if you had said those words, you would be put out. There's no way you could stay in the military
Absolutely.
by saying that.
Yeah.
There's no way your superior officer could say that and stay in the military. There's no way the general could say that and be recorded and stay the general. There's no way. There's no way. And yet we, I'll speak for myself, me, as the person who is expected to uphold the standards. And I was a chaplain. So not only was I expected to uphold the standards, but I was expected to teach them, to reinforce them, to help people heal enough so that they could be in them, right? We're expected to stay up and uphold these standards, and yet also expected to salute someone who completely disregards them. I could not be in that hypocrisy anymore. And this is what I mean by we as a society tolerate it. If you elect someone like that in one of the most powerful positions in the world, then what are you saying about domestic violence? What are you saying to the people who experience this violence? What are you saying about the amount of money that we are spending on this illness? What actually are you saying?
Yeah, powerful point. Thank you for bringing that up because I didn't know that.
Yeah, and Priscilla, I want to be very clear because I don't want people to be like, oh, she's a left. No, this is not a political statement. This is a statement about what we are worthy of and what we deserve and what we are tolerating, regardless of political position, party affiliation. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a man who was recorded and it was spread all over the news saying that you are not worthy of respect. That your body is not worthy to be honored. And we can no longer say that that's okay. That we put that aside in order to elect our party, or we put that aside in order to what? So
We got a long way
anyway.
to go, don't we?
We have a long way to go. We're talking about statistics. The way that I make it real for people, when I was in the Navy, this is the way that I made it real for people. The worldwide statistic is literally 1 in 3 women. 1 in 3 worldwide will experience sexual assault, domestic violence. In the United States alone, 1 in 4. So it's not vastly different, right? That means in any room that you go to, if there are 4 women, 1 of them have been assaulted. 1 of them could be very, very possibly, very real, could be in a domestic violence situation as you are in the room with that woman. That's how real it is. Any room that you're in, if there's 3 or more women, 1 of them is very probably to be in an assaulting relationship. That's what it is.
Yeah. Sobering thought.
It's
Sobering
a sobering
facts.
thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, what advice would you give to someone who's, in a domestic violence relationship right now? What advice would you give to either a man or a woman?
Yeah. The first I would give is we don't reach out and we don't say something when we come to the understanding. When we come to the understanding, this is toxic, this is not good. There's a point that happens. And when that point happens, we typically don't say anything because we're ashamed. We're ashamed that we got there in the first place. We're ashamed that we stay so long. We're ashamed that we didn't realize earlier. We're ashamed, especially if we have children in that situation. We're ashamed that sometimes some of us, we didn't prepare, so we don't have money. We feel we don't have money enough to get out. And we believe their lies, that they will destroy our career, they'll destroy our a reputation, or we believe their lies. And so my very first, my loving invitation is to bypass the shame and tell someone. That is literally the first act, like physical act. Making the choice is the first act, but the first physical step to freedom, tell someone. You may not feel like you have the strength to leave yet. Okay, give yourself grace. You may not feel like you can leave because of the children. Okay, give yourself grace. You may not feel like you can leave because he's going to tell your commanders or whatever the job. Okay, give yourself grace, but tell someone.
Tell someone you trust.
That person, tell someone you trust, because that person can help support. That person can help when you don't have the strength. That person can help get the resources. If you don't have the money or the place, they can start moving pieces with you and for you. And just getting the truth out helps you to come from the shadows. When we stay in the shadows, when we stay in the secrecy, we stay in the abuse. those shadows and that secrecy keeps us bound. I'll tell you, the secrecy is the devil. When someone's getting ready to kidnap a child or assault a child, what's the first thing they say? Don't tell anyone, right? So then the first step to freedom, tell someone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I like that. Now I want to shift to the suppression of your voice. Okay. And I went to your website and I read your story on your website, and this paragraph really jumped out to me. So I'm going to read it, okay?
Okay.
When I was an officer in the military, I sat in a meeting and held my breath as the supervisory officer banged his fist on the table and shouted, "This is why the Bible says women should be silent." I was told by leadership that my voice and my experience would never be good enough to be successful. Now, I want you to share your experience in the military with the suppression of your voice, because why I'm asking is because I think a lot of people, who haven't served in the military, they have no idea how it's like in the military.
Yeah.
So if you could just shed some light on a little bit of light on how it's like in the military, that would be great.
Yeah. How can you?
I know
Yeah,
it's
you don't
funny,
know
right?
until you know, right?
Yeah. Remember, before we got on, we were saying like, what were we thinking, right?
Right. Oh, there's just so much, it's its own microcosm, it's its own world. Yeah, first you have to know, in a situation like that, you're expected to be obedient. Your oath is to obey the superior officer. That is your oath. And we all swear to it. And so what that means is if you kind of disagree with your superior officer, the rule is, unless it's unlawful, you obey, and then you might be able to launch a complaint or or try to rectify the situation. But your first action is to obey, right? So now just think about that. You, in this particular situation, you are expected to sit under the suppression, to sit under the disrespect, the disregard, the shaming, and receive the repercussions of that before you're able to rectify it, right?
Mhm.
And so this was a very outward, very in your face, you don't belong, you're inferior, shut up. That's basically what it was, but it also happens subtly. So here I am, an officer, and I'm going to a meeting. And when you go to a meeting like this, a department head meeting, there's the table, and officers that can, or officers that are assigned, they sit at the table, and officers that are auxiliary, they will sit around the edge. Or people who are assistants, they'll sit around the edge of the table. And it was after reading, I think, Sheryl Sanders' book, I can't remember the name of the book now, but she talks a lot about come to the table, right? How women deserve a seat at the table. It's figurative. And it was this story that brought that home for me. So I put my things down at my seat at the table, and I go to do something. When I come back, a big burly male officer had put his things down super close to mine, kind of like, like a lion, like this, I'm taking over this particular space, So I go to sit, and I'm like completely moved and displaced in a way that I probably would not, I could not have sat at the table again. And the reason why I'm bringing this up, that it's subtle, It's subtle because the table represents your voice, your ability to speak your truth, your ability to speak your opinion, your ability to affect change. The table represents that. And so the subtle action of moving your things and moving you away from the table is in fact an undercover action of suppression. You don't deserve to speak. And I'm giving that example. I mean, there are many, many others that I could give that are very direct, very in your face, very shut up and go sit down. I was in chaplain training, and another chaplain officer pulled me aside and said, I just was wondering, how is it that you feel called to this position? Because, you know, in my denomination, women, you don't get to do this. Right. And so it's the constant questioning. It's the constant, you know, position of authority, whatever that position is. Oh, I'm a higher officer, so shut up. Oh, I'm speaking from the Bible, so shut up. I'm speaking from a superior denomination, so shut up. I'm speaking from, you know, whatever the position of authority is, there's always a reason why you should shut up and why you are inferior and why your voice needs to be suppressed. And you know as well as I do that these things happen physically and they stay in your memory, and you do things, right? Like I got myself back to the table, you know, and eventually my place was set, like, here, this is the exo, this is the admino, this is the chaplain, right? And so forth. But it happens energetically. The oppression happens energetically, you know as well as I do. And so when you find yourself able to speak up at home but not able to speak up in the office, it's because there's an energy that's stuck there from an oppression that has happened to you, and vice versa. You find yourself able to speak up at work, but when you go home you cannot speak up to your spouse or your right, you travel to your immediate family for, you know, for Christmas, and you can't speak up there because at some point in your life you were told you are not worthy, your voice is not worthy, be quiet and sit down. The chakra archetype for the throat is the silent child. And so somewhere in us, when we're feeling stuck, when we're feeling like we can't be on video, or we can't start that podcast we so desperately want to start, or you know, we want to tell our moms what we really think, or we we want to tell our husband, actually, I don't like when you do that during sex, or we want to, right, there's something that you want to say and you feel stuck here. It's very probable that there's an archetype silent child that needs some healing, that was suppressed somewhere in your life, subtly, subconsciously, subliminally, or maybe very outright directly, and you get to heal.
What are some of the ways you can heal the silent inner child? How do you heal that part of yourself?
Thank you. That was, I think that's a beautiful question. And I don't think there's any one way, but I know you agree, there are so many ways. I am a profound believer in Reiki, as you already know, because of my story and how it helped me so much, and how it helped my my adopted child so much. And so Reiki helps, I believe, you know, channeling the universal energy to really clear the energy in your chakra. I believe inner child work. Sometimes that inner child work can be done through meditation, through hypnotherapy, through Reiki. So inner child work, tapping. I use EFT, emotional freedom technique, tapping out the old stories, the old beliefs that are stuck in us from what happened to us, and bringing the emotions and the energetic level to a different place, right? Helping our parasympathetic nervous system to heal some of that, to heal all of it, really. And just physically, I say tap it out, right? Tap it out. That's another way, but I think science is catching up. And there are quite a few ways, sound therapy and singing bowls, I think is super powerful, especially because the throat, we're talking about sound. Um, I have a bowl right in front of me right now, that comes from a ritual that I did for the throat.
Oh, wow.
So I believe that rituals that symbolize for us the healing that gets to take place in our bodies is very important. But I think the really the heart of it is deciding, I'm going to heal from this, and then allowing yourself to experiment and seeing what feels true for you. But again, I'm a firm believer of Reiki, and I'm a firm believer of tapping. I'm also a firm believer of past life and ancestral wound healing, because some of it, I think, can come through the bloodline and can come ancestrally. So these are some of the ways.
So these are some of the services that you offer to the collective through your business? Is that accurate?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. I do Reiki, and I do tapping, and my specialty is going into ancestral healing and healing from the collective wounding. So, and
Like
I do all of
suppression of
that.
your voice, collective
Suppression of
wounding.
your
Yeah.
voice. Yeah, when a collective, like you feel the military energy says be quiet, right? Healing from the collective, the collective that said through the Bible or some other religious text, women should be silent, right? This is a collective wounding, and oftentimes we're experiencing it personally, but it's a collective wounding. So we get to heal from that, and right now I'm completing the the digital product Free Your Voice. It's so interesting. I'm actually completing it right now, and it comes with tapping sequences, and it comes with recorded Reiki infused meditations. But it's 21 days to free your voice, digital product, and that will be back online because I'm updating it, so it'll be back online in a couple of weeks.
Nice. So let's talk a little bit about two things I want to talk about. Your inner power coach, how you got started on that, right? For
Yeah.
women. And I gotta say, you're a phenomenal Vedic astrologer. So just two
Oh,
things.
thank you.
I had a reading with you, right? I think about a month
Yeah.
ago. Yeah. I've been to many other astrologers, and
Mm.
a lot of them just went over my head. I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. But with you, you took the time, and I had the opportunity to ask questions. And so it really made sense. And because of you, now I know I'm on the highest appropriate life path for me. So thank you for so much for
Yay!
that.
You're so welcome. That lights me up.
So yeah, how did you get
Yeah.
into inner power coach, and what is that all about for women? How do you help them to find their power?
Thank you. Yeah. So you know my story.
Yep, yep.
And I, was always it was always my desire, my purpose to help women heal, especially because of what I came through, because of my background. I believed that at the time to be theology, to be a chaplain, to be a minister. And so I did that, but there was always the calling. So when I was coming out of the military, I was like, no, I need to work with women, and I need to work with them directly, and I need to stop the BS. Like I need for more and more and more women to be able to feel their power and speak their power so that we can start healing the collective. Um, and do things like not elect someone who blatantly disrespects our body in public, right? And I was like, okay, I need to do this. So as I was coming out of the military, I was like, okay, I'm gonna start taking clients. I had two coaching certifications when I went through my master's, but I didn't do anything with it because I went into the military and I became a chaplain, and I was doing what I felt called to do. And so coming out of the military, I was like, now's the time. I'm going to make use of all my experience and all my the wisdom, and then I'm going to use the coaching certifications, and I'm going to help women be in their inner power. Really step into who they are and the power within. The issue is because we've been suppressed for so long, we have no idea how much power resides within us. Mentally, emotionally, and definitely spiritually, intuitively, vocally. When we step into that power, like undoubtedly and unapologetically, there's nothing that we can't do. I absolutely believe that. So now it's like, okay, how do we help women shed the projections, the suppressions, the energies that are stuck in our womb, stuck in our throat, stuck in our inner eye? How do we really, with the collective? And so that's what I have been doing, like just telling women, hey, you're more powerful than you think you are. And one of the things that really gets me going is when I hear a woman say, I don't know. As long as you've probably been alive and conscious, you've probably heard the saying, a woman's intuition is always right, right? This has been a saying in our world, and yet we have been taught to negate it. And when I hear women say, I don't know, and they say it repeatedly, I'm like incensed. I'm like, no, you do know. You absolutely do know. And there are so many ways that you do know. And it's getting women back to that, getting women back to their superpower that the world has always known that we have. Getting us back there and getting us to trust it and getting us to move in it. And that's why I'm glad I found Vedic astrology, because it gives me a tool to show it, right? Yeah, I can usher you through Reiki and tapping for you to feel it and start to make the moves in it. And I can give you coaching to start making the mindset shifts to move in it. But once you see it and all of those things start combining, I know that there's no stopping you. I know that. I
So
know it.
explain to the audience, what's the difference between, Vedic astrology and like regular astrology?
Sure. So there actually, I came to find out there's actually a few different astrologies, but Western astrology is the one we know in the United States and that area. Vedic astrology comes from India. There are a few differences. One is that Western astrology is centered around your sun, where the sun was positioned when you were born. So it's your sun sign that you go by. And Vedic astrology, it's your ascending. So what constellation was ascending over the horizon when you were born? It's a little more balanced energy. It's not, the sun is a masculine energy, but Vedic is like, what's your ascending? What's your moon? It's a little more balanced. The other reason it's considered to be more accurate is because, I don't want to go too deep, but there's what we call houses. Houses are fixed areas in the sky. And when you were born, there's a snapshot. Where was the sun? Where was the moon? Where were the constellations? Where were the planets passing when you were born? And they all pass through 12 different houses. In Vedic astrology, the house degrees are wider to accommodate for the wobble of the earth. So we know through science that the earth wobbles when it's doing its thing. Western astrology doesn't account for that. And NASA actually caught this. And I know that because I read an article about it, that Western astrology degrees are off because they don't account for the wobble of the earth. And although NASA is not into astrology, right? But but they know that the degrees of constellations are off. And so fascinating that Vedic astrology coming to us from thousands of years ago, before we have any of these instruments, had such an accurate idea that the earth wobbles, that the degrees of the houses need to be wider, right? Yeah, it doesn't account for the further out planets, Pluto, Neptune, because they only went by what they could see and what they understood, right? yeah, so those are the major differences. And what I often tell people is that I know we say, particularly Western side, I'm Aries or I'm, Scorpio, I'm whatever. But the truth is you are all 12. You're all 12 signs, because at the snapshot of the sky when you were born, somebody was somewhere.
Right, right.
All the constellations and planets were somewhere in that snapshot, just not in your first house. And what blows people's mind is most of your strength and your purpose is not in what you consider your sign. It could be somewhere else in your chart. So yeah, these are the major differences.
We're back, everybody. We're sorry because I had a power surge and I lost power to my computer for a few minutes, but we're back again. So LaToya, you were talking about Vedic astrology, and I wanted to ask you, where can people find you if they want to connect with you and the services that you offer?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm so glad. So hopefully everybody got all the juiciness. It's so juicy. And if you want some of that juiciness, please go to LaToyaZavala.com, and you can see on the Zoom or the screen my name. It's literally my name, LaToyaZavala.com. And yes, the services are there, and I would be more than happy to serve you in the capacity that your soul desires.
Wonderful. And we have a few minutes left, so I will ask you my signature closing question that I ask all my guests. And this is the question: what is your closing message for humanity to help in our collective healing and empowerment?
My closing message is we absolutely all can be the light, the magic, the unconditional love that we were meant to be. And we get to make that choice.
I love that.
Complete.
Yes. Short, but so profound. Thank you, LaToya, for being here today and sharing so much of your wisdom and knowledge and your power. I am so honored to connect with you. You are such a powerful, powerful soul.
Oh, thank you.
And thank you so much for being here. And for everybody who's watching and listening, thank you for your time. And until next time, bye for now.
Bye, everybody.